Good afternoon. I'm the Reverend Nate Klug. I'm one of the ministers here at the First Parish in Lincoln, and I want to extend a warm welcome to each and every one of you on behalf of Josh and Matt and on behalf of the entire First Parish family, where Denise was a member for 41 years. Friends, we gather on this Saturday afternoon among friends old and new in the protective shelter of God's love to celebrate the life and to mourn the loss of Denise Bienfang. Denise lived long enough to have many roles: daughter to Doris and Robert, sister to Robert and Paul, beloved wife for 60 years to Dawn, whose life we celebrated in our sanctuary last winter, mother to Matt and Josh, grandmother to Micah, Britt, Abby, Caroline, Lily, and Sam. Denise earned a master's degree in social work and spent time at Boston Children's Hospital, and then for 30 years she had a career as a realtor in Lincoln and in the surrounding communities. As many of you know, Denise had a keen eye for staging. Her aesthetic gifts and her no-nonsense approach endeared her to many. Denise and Dawn moved to Lincoln in 1974 as part of the Back to the Land movement. Together, they were quite a team, heating their house with wood, raising chickens, tending a garden. Independence and resilience were two of the values that Denise lifted up in summing up their relationship. And as Denise's minister, I also have to add that I saw her softer side on display many times too. Denise loved people. She loved to marvel at them and wonder about them. She loved to travel. She was curious about the world. She loved to bring people together. And as I'm sure other people will mention this afternoon, she had one of the most wonderful laughs you will ever hear. So we come together today to share stories and memories, to join our voices in song and prayer, to lift up our hearts in love as we say farewell to a loving and spirited woman. I would invite you now to rise as you are able, as we join our voices in our opening hymn, which can be found in the red hymnal, number 209, Abide With Me. wish, you're invited to join with me in saying our unison prayer, the words of comfort from Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So now we have a treat in store for us. I was talking to Josh and Matt about some of Denise's favorite music, and they mentioned the song Ripple from the Grateful Dead. And so, Miranda, tell us what we can do next.
Feel free to join me in any part of this that you know. And I know that all of you will be able to sing the very end, which is on La Di Da. And so by the time I get to that part, hopefully you can all join in.
blessed to hear two remembrances from Denise's sons. We'll begin with Matt, and then we'll hear from Josh.
So it's really wonderful to see the outpouring of my mother's friends here today in remembrance. I'm glad we waited to give people a chance to return from summer retreats and family activities so that so many of you would be here in person. Just over 6 months ago, I stood at this very spot. I told some stories about my dad. Today, I'm going to let the words of my mother tell you one more story. Some of you have probably heard this story directly from her, albeit abbreviated, and I have a suspicion that this might have appeared and sits in the dusty archives of the Lincoln Journal someplace. But the story takes place in the 80s, and I've heard versions of it many times since then. But I came across this travelogue she penned in a desk file titled Miscellaneous. And I thought it was a great story to share with you today as it represents so many things that were my mom. Mom's words. When I turned 40, I decided I wanted to learn to backpack and signed up for a poorly conceived trip for which I was equally poorly prepared. A 20-something-year-old antelope from Oregon masquerading as our group leader, two physical education teachers, and 3 young men training to hike the Appalachian Trail and I went out for 5 days of backpacking in the Adirondacks. In retrospect, I should have guessed at the agenda when they showed up in well-worn French hiking boots while I wore a pair of standard-issue Sears Roebuck work boots. I bailed out after 3 very difficult days. Covered with grapefruit-sized bruises, exhausted, disappointed, and very angry, I bushwhacked 2 miles to a trail which led to the nearest town. The actual trail ended at the doorstep of a private summer club. I felt a strange sense of homecoming as I climbed the wooden front steps and noticed the familiar items of many summers spent in Maine. The wooden rockers on the front porch, the hemp runner, and the comforting slap of the wooden screen door as it closed behind me. The man behind the front desk said no, I couldn't use the telephone, it was a private club. Certain that he simply didn't understand my need. I explained further, but received the same reply. On my way out, I studied the posted membership listing, thinking that surely there must be someone on the list I knew from somewhere sometime. There was, but in my exhausted state, I didn't recognize the name of my son's headmaster. My pack was heavy, I was exhausted, and it was raining. But I knew I could make it to town, even without the help of the desk clerk, whose club I didn't want to belong to anyway. A few miles later, I began to weigh the merits of hitchhiking. My adolescence was prior to the late 60s and 70s and did not include hitchhiking. After running through the catalog of possible dangers in my head, I decided that I would definitely put out my thumb for the very next car. It came and went. In fact, a lot of cars came and went. My hand did move, although I'm not at all certain that it communicated the intent of hitchhiking. More likely, it was taken as a wave or perhaps a gesture readjusting my pack. After a while, it occurred to me that in spite of the dangers I was willing to risk, no one was going to pick me up. And as well as being bruised and exhausted, I carried humiliation with my pack. The main street of Keene, New York is lined with small white wood clapboard houses, a gas station, a public library, and a general store with a payphone outside from which I called to arrange a pickup 6 hours later. To get out of the rain, I checked out the general store, bought a candy bar, wandered up and down the 3 aisles, aware of the clerk's eyes watching me closely. I pondered where I could spend the next 5.5 hours. Certainly it was not going to be in the general store. But down the street, the public library had a small front porch, a wooden screen door, and no one seemed to notice as I slipped off my pack and sank into the old chair off to the side. I noted that the chair was vinyl and safe to be sat on, even though I was wet and very dirty. I made no pretense of reading a book or even holding a book. I slept, grateful that I was not too dirty, too wet, too old, too weak, too poor, or too unappealing to spend 5 hours sleeping in the Keene, New York Public Library. My mother had great affinity for the libraries, particularly this one. At times it was my babysitter. At times Hetty Kent knew exactly which book boys my age wanted to read. And it was my bus stop every morning on the way to Fenn. So she saw libraries as a refuge, quite frankly. And I know she tried to pass that on to me. So I thank you all for being here, and we'll talk to you later. Tell some good stories, please.
Okay. Thank you, Matt, for that awesome remembrance, because I had actually forgotten that story. It's a great one. And thank everybody for coming and for the help putting this together. Mom would have loved to have been here, obviously, but to see you all. And I think she loves the idea that we're doing this to think of her. And she wouldn't want to ask for it, but I know that she would love it anyway. And Miranda, thank you for that beautiful song. It was really lovely, and she would have loved that for sure. Okay. I didn't. I didn't have the ability to really prepare this because it was really hard for me, like painful to think about. So this might be a little disjoint. Okay. Mom expressed many times how hard it was for her to be the youngest girl in her family. And then as a mom, she also became the odd gender out once again. And sometimes, Matt and I used to tease her a lot when we were really young, just because boys. And there were times when she'd lie on the couch and with her thumb tucked under her fingers. And my dad used to say that she was worrying. And I didn't know what it was. But if it was really intense, she'd have her thumbs under her fingers, and then she'd also have her finger under her nose, like this, which we called double thumb sign. Which something was up and we didn't really know what. Looking back, I mean, I know she was a mom and had plenty to worry about, but I think that she actually did a lot of information processing that way. I think as I began to know her also as an adult, I think that she was a very intuitive thinker. I think that that's how she understood things. And that was a tremendous gift to me. And I loved it. And it was also very difficult to understand sometimes. So I'm sure if you knew Mom and spent any amount of time with her, you knew that every now and then she would say something that landed like a bomb. And she'd just look at you. And it came out of nowhere and it would seem really harsh and you'd be like, okay. But I think that those thoughts came from somewhere that she didn't really want to try to bother to explain. Sometimes when I was a kid, I was in the kitchen and she would be dealing with somebody on the phone and she would be getting more and more annoyed, but they wouldn't know. But I'd be watching it because as a kid I was tuned into my mom. And inevitably they get to the point where they ask for the name and address, and she'd say Bienfang, and then she'd have to spell it, and normally she would always say B as in Boston, I-E-N, F as in Frank, A-N-G, but if the person was really pissing her off, she'd say B as in Boston, I-E-N, F as in fuck you, A-N-G, which I really, the first time, I couldn't believe my mom did that. But it was a lot like a few other instances of things that Mom did. Like when I was really little and I went to the Lincoln nursery school here, one day we came home, I was probably 3 or 4, and I was, playing with tough plastic toys or whatever, and she said, I really want circus peanuts. And all I heard was the word circus, and I was thrilled. I was like, yay! And I didn't know what she meant, but I was in for it. I was up for it. And so we went to the store and bought just circus peanuts, those little orange candies, and nothing else. And I couldn't believe it. I know that sounds like a really small thing, but to my small mind, it blew it away that my mom wanted to have that much fun and would do something as awesome as just go buy candy and nothing else. That really struck with me that she would do something on the spur of the moment because that's what she just wanted to do. And it's kind of like when she learned to weld or learned to backpack, or she just had that very boldness that she could just take a big step, and you just like, okay, all right, I'll catch up. Anyway, I do think that her intuitive thinking was one of the reasons that she was so good at setting things up to be nice, whether it's her garden or her house or whatever. She just knew how to do things and where things went. And I think that's also one of the reasons why she loved music so much, and maybe even that song, which it's a very intuitive song. The lyrics, if you listen to them or read them, just there's something going on there. And so she was also my mom, and I can talk to her about her as a person, and then I can try to talk to her about her as my mom, or our mom. But I don't think I can express it all. I would just like to say that her effort and her love are the basis of everything. And my childhood felt really good, and I loved it. I was very lucky. I was very lucky. And she created this childhood. And it was a lot of fun, and she was great raising 2 boys in spite of being the odd one out in our gender family. But she let Matt and me do wonderful things like catch live bees in plastic bags and then ice them to sleep, paint their back, and then watch them wake up and fly away. And she'd let us play with fire. We were allowed to literally burn anything we wanted as long as we could put it in a coffee can. And then one time when Matt and I were young, we had to walk from the library home for some reason. I think Dad had the car, or I don't know what was going on. I was too young, but she knew it was too far for us to conceive of, so she told us that we were going to find the largest tree in town. And so Matt and I excitedly ran from tree to tree with a tape measure all the way from the library home. And it was like this giant adventure. And we kind of actually hit the largest one around Denormity's Hill, but it didn't really matter. We thought there might be a bigger one just ahead. All right, I'm almost done. So she created our home. She was self-effacing and she didn't like to toot her own horn. But I think by placing herself in the background, she somehow became the context for many things. I mean, even Dad hung off the family structure that she created. And she was the center of the family throughout the years. It's impossible for me to express my gratitude for my mom. She created the place I call home and the place where I come from. And even recently, I would call her, and if I asked her for advice, she wouldn't give me any. She'd just say, well, you'll figure it out. Or more often than not, we just have a very inconsequential conversation. But that was enough for me to connect with home on some intuitive level, and I will really miss that.
Thank you so much, Josh and Matt. So speaking of gardening, we're going to sing a hymn. It's called Earth Was Given as a Garden, and it can be found on page 207 of the Gray hymnal.
Thank
come now to our time of open sharing, a time when we continue to remember Denise by sharing a brief story, a memory, even a phrase that comes to mind. If you have something to say, we'd love to hear from you in this moment. Please raise your hand and I will make my way around with the microphone.
I'm Denise's older brother, and my brother Paul is also her older brother. And I thought I should say something because we're the only two who knew Denise when she was small, and what her early childhood was like. Paul came along, and 13 months later, I came along. And then it was 3 years before Denise was born. What that meant, of course, is by the time she was a baby, Paul and I were fully engaged, fighting with each other, playing with each other. And no other little girl came along in our family. So Denise was kind of left out. Paul and I didn't interact with her that much. We were too busy with each other. And my father knew much better how to deal with two boys than with a little girl. So he was out playing catch with us or teaching us to play tennis. And he didn't think to include her as well. Although, in fact, Denise was a pretty good athlete. She had pretty good athletic ability. Denise was essentially left mostly to our mother, and she got into cooking very early, and the closest she came to identifying with Dad was, since he worked in the medical field, she had a nurse's costume and loved to play nurse. And she also found refuge in the downstairs part of our house with her grandmother, who spent a lot of her time looking out the window, watching Paul and me in the playground, and if a ball came over the fence, toddling out to swipe it and save it for us. But Denise would go down there and sit with grandmother and pretend to say the rosary with her. That's how it was until my dad got us a place at Rocky Nook on the shore, and in the summer, Denise was old enough to join the group of girls who hung out on the beach and have her own little group of friends. I don't know whether it's important to say this, but this is some of what Denise's early childhood was like. Thank you.
My name's Paul. Oops, is that better? And was Denise's brother. I have a unique position in her life, which she often referred to. I got her first date with a college boy. And they went to a fraternity party and did what you drink at what you do at a fraternity party, you drink. And you wobble a lot. And she did all of that and had a terrific time. And I was delighted to delighted.
Hi, I'm a friend, Lee Harrison. I just wanted to say she was a wonderful person, but very eccentric, and she held her opinions very strongly. You could argue with her, and it never did any good at all. And she had wonderful ideas that she would become sort of obsessed with, like buying the circus candy. And at one point, we were together at Lake George, where my ancestral family is, and we were sitting in the living room, and Denise said, "This room does not work at all." I said, "What? My grandparents built this room, and it's got all their Chinese furniture in it." She said, "Well, I can't help that. It doesn't work." And I said, "What?" And she said, "Let's go get some casters, and we'll move everything around, and you'll see what I mean." And I said, "Well, I'm not sure." "Oh, come on." So we went and got casters and put it under and spent all day moving sofas and tables all over the place. And when we were done, I said, "You know what? This does work a lot better as a..." And she said, "See, I told you." And my cousins all said, "Wow, whoever thought of moving the furniture in this room? It's so much better." And that was one of her great ideas that really worked out. But more than that, she was a great friend. And she was there. If you needed her, she was there in jig time. And I just can't believe that she's still not sitting in her family room with a cup of tea and another heart-to-heart conversation. And I'll really, really miss that.
Hi, I'm going to move forward so you don't have to all crane your necks. My name is Doreen Machanda, and for the last few years I've had the pleasure of being on the Women's Travel Club with Denise. And for those of you who don't know about the Women's Travel Club, I think this actually was quite an important part of Denise's life. The club was started in 1934 for women to share informative and intelligent travel with one another, and we meet once a month and tell stories about our travel and try to inform each other about it's not just a photo tour, but the historical and cultural context of these trips. I'm a more recent member, but when I was talking to some former members about Denise's contributions to the travel club, many people recall a talk in 2011 that Lee and Denise did on their trip in 2010 to Mongolia. And Lee, I'll have to hear some more of these stories, but apparently it was a raucous adventure that involved traveling across the Gobi Desert, several pickpockets, if I understand correctly, and once they got to the festival that they were supposed to attend, which was described as a combination of the 4th of July and a NASCAR meet, apparently Denise's husband got kicked out for sitting on the floor of all things. So we were constantly regaled with Denise's travel stories. Recently in 2021, she told us about her trip to Malta and described it as a mishmash of food and culture and politics. And you could tell from her stories how much she adored traveling the world and just understanding the human condition. But I think with the travel club, the thing that she will be most remembered for is her stewardship of our scholarship program. And again, for those of you who don't know, since 1967, we have been providing scholarships for women to embark on amazing adventures around the world, including people who've gone to study literacy and nutrition in the Philippines, study woodblock printing in China, fiber artistry in Poland, unhoused people living around the Vatican, and a particularly memorable student who was looking at women's nude protesting in Nigeria. I think it's safe to say that Denise has had an incredible impact for women around the country and around the world, including two of my own students, one of whom got a scholarship to follow in Jane Goodall's footsteps, studying chimpanzees in Tanzania, and another one who is currently actually in Norway trying to understand reformative women's prisons there. Now, I think the thing that Denise was most proud of with the scholarship was not only that we fund just compelling projects that women are doing around the world, but also the fact that we have no restrictions on this scholarship with respect to age or citizenship, educational level, interest, destination at all. It was so important to Denise that we would be able to fund women anywhere doing anything. And so on our scholarship committee meetings, we didn't just talk about how we would advertise our scholarship at MIT and Harvard and all of the amazing elite institutions we have here, but also the Berklee School of Music, Mass Art, all of the community centers around us, and of course her beloved libraries, so that we could reach people everywhere. She was very, very proud of that. And I will say I got to work with Denise quite closely. I can affirm she was not the biggest fan of technology. And one of my last emails to her was a gentle suggestion that if she emailed someone in all caps, it was like yelling at them. And she didn't seem to care, but she did acknowledge that maybe she wouldn't do that again. I think the other thing that she hated was Zoom, as far as I could tell. And so she insisted anytime that we interviewed any of the scholarship applicants that we would do them in person. She really believed that meeting everybody in person allowed her to really get a sense for that individual. And I think it was that personal touch that we'll miss a lot with the scholarship committee. It was not just the interviews, but also all of the meetings we had, which she graciously hosted in her lovely home in Lincoln, often with a home-cooked meal for all of us, which I will also miss. And many of you will know I have two small children, including a 4-year-old daughter named Penelope who has a penchant for taking off all her clothes. And so I'm often asking the women's travel members, what am I supposed to do with Penelope? And I would sometimes ask Denise, and she said, you know what, I really can't help you. I had 2 sons, and they mostly kept their clothes on. And she said it with an enormous amount of pride, and I could tell how proud she was. So I just want to finish. Denise's work with the scholarship committee for the Women's Travel Club and her presence at our monthly meetings will be missed enormously. But as a continuing member of the scholarship committee, I know we will hold her legacy. We will constantly think of her in our meetings and make sure that we continue to reach women around the world.
Hi, Melanie Hagopian here. My family and I joined the church some 30 years ago, and a couple of years after we joined, I was asked to be on the parish committee, and I was lucky enough to have Denise on the committee with me. And after being on the committee, I was then asked to be the parish committee chair, of which I was definitely ready. And I told Denise this, and she said, no, you are ready. And I said, no, I'm not ready. And she said, well, why don't you ask someone to be a co-chair? I said, how about you? Well, no, I think that Claire Cunningham would be a good co-chair. I don't know if anybody remembers Claire, but Claire was a wonderful co-chair. So anyway, what I remember about Denise was that, through many discussions about lots of different things, whether we were becoming an open and affirming church, putting in the sidewalk from the parish house down here to here, the sanctuary, she always had very clear, good thoughts, solid opinions, as everybody has expressed, and always delivered with a sense of humor. I once commented on how great a job she was doing at the Christmas fair, and I said how much I appreciated that. And she said, well, you know, we're done. My generation's done. I think it's up for you guys, your generation. I said, no, we're not ready. Yes, you are ready. Anyway, I miss her terribly. I meant to go visit her after Dawn passed, and I never got that opportunity, and that is terribly sad to me. But I just remember her as a mentor and a welcoming, smart, funny, delightful human being that I just feel so privileged to have known, and I really enjoyed hearing all these wonderful stories about her.
Hi, I'm Leanne. I'm Paul's daughter, so I am Denise's niece. I was called by her name every day of my childhood because he couldn't keep track of which little girl I was, I think. And we moved away from the East Coast when I was 3, so my actual memories of Denise over the years were disjointed. Age 3, age maybe 7, maybe 12, maybe 16. But I felt a special kinship with her because I kept being called by her name, and because she impressed me as a person every time we were together at each of those stages. For example, when I was probably 6 or 7, I remember experiencing that fire thing Josh mentioned. She looked out the window just as Dawn was coming in from work and said, honey, could you tell them they're not allowed to start a fire in that part of the yard? And I can't tell you the impression that made. Don said very gravely, he said, good rule, Denise. When I was 12 and beginning to get self-conscious, she told me that she had had skinny legs like I did when she was little, but now her legs were one of Don's favorite parts of her. I clung to that. I also remember on the inside of her kitchen cabinet that visit, she had a little blurb that she'd cut out about how potatoes didn't lose any of their nutrients when you turned them into French fries. So, she often told me about the thing that Rob mentioned, about feeling left out and lesser than as the girl trailing the boys through the world, and I felt that way too a bit in my life. So later on, she became my model of very intentionally reclaiming your sense of self. I think it started with tennis, which was the family sport that I too was forced to play. And neither of us were very good at it compared to the brothers, and my brother too, which inherited every single one of those genes. When I visited her at 16, she said, now if you tell your father this, we are no longer friends. But I'm taking tennis lessons. And she said, it's a blast. So, and then, you know, that backpacking trip and the outward bound experiences and the course, everything that she did, she chose for herself. She created her adult life in a way that I admire and I emulate as much as I can. Later, much later, we spent 2 summers together down at the Cape. I mean, not whole summers. I think I was there a week at a time, but they loom very large in my memories. We had so much fun together, and I hadn't known her that well because we never lived nearby. But we went to thrift shops, and we went whale watching, and we went to all the different little museums. And at night, we would binge watch this show called Monarch of the Glen. Do you know, like, she loved that thing, and it was funny, it was great, but she kept elbowing me and saying, if Don ever forces me to get another dog, we're naming it Useless, like their dog. So, she is a person I admire and love and had so much fun with, and I will miss her so much.
My name is Sarah Mattis, and I loved hearing all these stories. Yes, Denise was eccentric, and she was crusty, and she was opinionated, and she could put you in your place in the nicest way, but firmly. What I will miss about Denise most is the way she gathered, the way she created community. And I wonder, I got an email from somebody this morning who said Denise had brought them to Lincoln and was remembering that experience with helping their family relocate to Lincoln. I don't know how she discovered us, because we were much younger than she and Dawn. We didn't have little children. We were new to town, but she somehow grabbed onto us. And she brought us into community through dinner parties, through big parties, through calling and saying, I think you need to meet this person, and getting us together with people she thought that might be a good match. And I wonder, as I look around and I hear these stories, how much other kinds of, all these little small bits of communities that she created that was also part of a larger whole. Certainly this congregation, this church was very important to her, and she was constantly seeking ways to be a part of it, but also bring other people into it and together. And so the community of Lincoln has benefited very much from her ability to bring people together, build community across denominations, across social groups, across clubs, across sports. And I will personally miss that phone call about who do you want to have dinner with? Or let's go to the 99 with so-and-so. I would cringe, but not about the so-and-so, but about the 99. But that is what I am missing acutely, is that bringing together. I'm thinking, how am I going to meet new people? Denise seemed to know everyone. And this community was made better for her, and we'll miss that.
I'm a big crier. I apologize in advance. I'm Stella Downey. I'm another one of Denise's nieces. And like Leanne, really, really valued spending more time with her as an adult and getting to sort of feel her companionship, friendship, and support. We would often meet for lunch, halfway. We liked the summer shack a lot. And I really would enjoy her loudly professed love for a fish taco, a crusty towel, and pre-grated cheese from Costco. She just really had the things she liked, and she was verbal on them. And through lucky timing, I had the great honor of sitting with her for many hours in the days before she died. And afterwards, I jotted down a couple of things that I brought to share. So, her dying mantra was, I don't know, which I noted in contrast to her living mantra, which was, I'm not in charge. Which I think really annoyed Matt in particular. The last exchange I was a part of with her was when Lee was telling a story about which grandchild broke the China horse, and she said, I think it was Britt. And Denise, after not saying much for many hours, said, no, Abby. With a big smile, which let us know that she really was there with us, enjoying these stories. So when I got home, I thought about, if you don't know and you're not in charge, then maybe, that's a good mantra for me to accept what is, let go of needing to control things, be open to learning and knowledge and advice, and not needing to be better or an expert, just being. And I hope I'll bring that forward as a gift from her.
I'm Jeff Eaton here in Lincoln, and many, many years ago, I found myself in the middle of Penobscot Bay, sailing with a great friend of mine who sailed all over the world with him, Rooney Ozzie, a generation ahead of me. And he was taking a busman's holiday by being on a Camden schooner, which he liked as a change. He woke up one morning with very poor, if not complete, loss of sight in one of his eyes. And so I felt that the quickest route to getting help for him was through Denise, who I called, and she started the process of finding help. Thank you, Denise.
Hi, I'm Lily, Denise's granddaughter. I don't have like a specific story to tell or anything, and I'm not a very good public speaker, but I just have a lot of fond memories with her of playing bananagrams and building puzzles and playing word cookies. And while we would do these things, she would tell me a lot about her life, and it was fascinating because she was from like a different time period, so a lot of the things that she told us were different from now. Anyways, and I remember sometimes when we would be doing these things, she'd get like a call or a text on her phone from like a friend or someone she knew, and she'd look at it and she'd be like, oh, that's nice. But she wouldn't really respond or pick it up. And I remember someone else talked and she said that she didn't really like technology. So I would be like, and she would always say like, oh, I have no friends, no one calls me or anything. I was like, yes, they do. But, so one time I was walking home from the gym and I was like calling a lot of people, so I decided to call her. And I didn't know if she would pick up, but she did pick up. And we talked the whole way home, and it meant a lot to me. That doesn't mean that she didn't leave a lot of my texts on read. But that time she did pick up, and it was just really nice to talk to her and have her respond to me.
Hi everyone, my name is Micah. I'm Denise's grandson as well. I really just wanted to say that she made a huge impact on everyone. She had so many strong character traits. I think my dad nailed it on the head when he said that she was absolutely the center of the family. Even though you could tell that she was a girl amongst many boys, but she absolutely dominated the room and would not apologize for it. The main thing that I wanted to share that I definitely take away from her, that I know that she passed on to my dad, and I take away from my dad also, is that she was incredibly proud of her family. I think the happiest that I would ever see her is when she would see either Matt or my dad being great parents and being the best of themselves. She loved people. She wanted to see them be the best that they could be and enjoying themselves. And I'll never forget those moments with her. My dad would be out playing with Sam and Lily in their yard. Denise and I would be sitting on the couches in the living room. And she would just turn to me and comment on how nice it was just watching them. And those are the little things that I really treasured from her.
Well, what privilege to hear some of the ways that Denise has touched the lives of us here in this room and people far beyond as well. Of course, at our reception following the service, there will be more time to share memories and tell stories. At this moment, I would invite you to join with me in an attitude of prayer. Holy One, abiding mystery, Spirit of love. Today we entrust Denise Repetto Bienfang to your eternal care. We thank you for your steadfast love for Denise all the days of her earthly life. We thank you for all that she was to those who knew her. And we thank you that for Denise all discomfort and sorrow are ended. Death itself is past, and that she has entered the home where all your people gather in peace. And now as we prepare to go forth from this place, we ask that what we've experienced this afternoon in our listening and our sharing might linger with us, that we might continue to remember Denise, and as her spirit lives on in us, we might find new ways of coming alive ourselves, of sharing joy and love with the world as our songs fill the air, as Jerry Garcia put it. In your many names we pray. Amen. We're invited now to rise as we're able as we sing our closing hymn, which can be found in the red hymnal number 429, Eternal Father, Strong to Save. Song that Denise loved, and we thought it would be an appropriate way to send us forth from this place. After the postlude, a reception will be held in the Stearns Room right through those doors. Our restrooms are that way as well, so please stick around if you're able. And now, keeping in mind all the ways we have been blessed by what we've heard and shared today, and by all our different ways of knowing Denise, listen for these words of benediction. May God bless you and keep you. May God make God's face to shine upon you. May God be merciful unto you and grant you peace. Amen.